Today we saw one of the most dominant performances from a GC rider in recent history, and certainly that I've ever seen live. Stage 8 of the Tour de France 2021, the first hard high mountain day with 3 back-to-back Category 1 climbs, a 5k 6.5% climb straight out the gate that would put the sprinters outside the time limit pressure, as well as the Col de Rome, Col de la Colombière combination, both very steep, averaging over 7.5, 8.5% gradients. And Mark Cavendish in the green jersey, he made the time cut in the gruppetto today, which was good to see, but that was the first and last we would see of him. Mike Woods attacking, trying to get in the breakaway. The treacherous roads put Woods into difficulty running off the road, and we saw once again Ineos and Jumbo-Visma were trying to put Pogačar and UAE-Emirates under pressure in this rolling terrain before the first proper climbs. You see UAE having to chase, they're all on the radio, and Ineos riders in this first group. Wout van Aert had also tried to attack and would attack again, but we saw Jumbo and Ineos prime GC contenders before the race, Thomas and Roglic, having a worse day than even yesterday where Roglic lost more time. They both joined the gruppetto before we even started the first Category 1 climb, and I gotta say it was pretty tough to see both of them struggling like that. But Wout van Aert kept trying. You see Pogačar, he eventually was closing these gaps himself. Mohoric, his Slovenian compatriot, helping him on the descent. And yeah, it was a fiery, fast start, but Pogačar pretty much neutralized the later attacks himself, and it calmed down because Ineos were getting tired. Gegenhardt had tried a lot, Porte had tried to get in the move, while Poles, intent on sitting 20 seconds in front of the Peloton today and getting the combativity prize, attacked for like the third time, and finally a non-threatening break was allowed to go up the road with like Tadej Pogačar, Cataneo, Valverde, Simon Yates, Dylan Teuns, riders who weren't a GC threat, and there were no satellite riders either apart from Jonathan Castroviejo. But with this stage, satellite riders aren't that useful. There's no real flat valleys between the two climbs, and the climb's very steep. MVDP, he'd lose the yellow jersey today. He wasn't able to cram climbing overnight like he was with the TT before stage 5, and Wout Poels was brought back by the main breakaway, with Christopher Juul-Jensen riding there for Simon Yates, Sepp Kuss up the road, I think going for the KOM points. DSM had Søren Kragh Andersen to help Tadej Pogačar, and they did that on one of the descents before the Col de Rome. DSM, while Poels may be going for his own ambitions, maybe they were riding for Dylan Teuns. Teuns is back in the group, Poels forcing the others to accelerate once again. And yeah, the roads are wet, the descents between these climbs were pretty twisty, and this is the second time since Tour de Suisse the other week where a rider's just avoided disaster by pretty much running into a driveway like Chavez at Tour de Suisse. Woods promptly attacked the group on Col de Rome when past DSM pretty easily, and back in the GC group it was UAE and Tadej Pogačar time. Ineos had tried yesterday, they tried in the valley before this, and Pogačar told Formolo to get on the front and absolutely drill it before he attacked the group. Carapaz the only one able to respond initially. Vingegaard had crashed before, he's out of position and he's not able to bridge across. Lutsenko just riding his own pace, probably realistically going for a podium. Alaphilippe dropped, he'd lose like 18 minutes today. Pogačar goes a second time, looks Carapaz dead in the eye, sees he has a small gap and says, "Excuse me, I'd like to practice some social distancing for the next 30 kilometers," and does the Col de Rome on his own, passing Kragh Andersen, all the remnants of the breakaway, putting over a minute, somewhere between 70 and 90 seconds into Carapaz on that second to last climb, and he's about 5 minutes behind the Woods Teuns breakaway group, so it doesn't look like it's realistic that he'd be able to catch them. Woods, despite the advantage he gained on Col de Rome, he's on the Colombière and he's not a great descender as we saw earlier in the day. He's losing time to, say, Izagirre, Dylan Teuns chasing behind, but he gets to the climb on his own, 7.5 k's, 8.5% steeper at the end. And again, Pogačar, he says he loves the cold and wet conditions. It was that again today, and he basically put every other rider in the bin. Wout van Aert riding on his own behind the Vingegaard group. Dylan Teuns attacked Ion Izagirre in the break ahead of Tadej Pogačar, bridging up to Mike Woods. Teuns' teammate Mohoric won the stage yesterday, and Teuns seemed to pace himself a little bit better on this stage. Woods went early, Teuns brought him back and then promptly dropped him on the Colombière. And now the only threat to Dylan Teuns was Tadej Pogačar fast approaching him from behind. Pogačar was only 12 seconds behind Teuns at the top of Colombière, but on the descent, Teuns had the advantage in that he went full gas, taking all the risks possible, few hair-raising moments, because obviously Tadej Pogačar was trying to take it pretty safe. And Teuns, who won a stage in the Tour de France back in 2019, is back winning another stage. Bahrain just keep winning stages. Imagine if they'd brought Mark Padun, if Landa and Haig hadn't had injuries and crashes, Bahrain might have been the only real threat to Tadej Pogačar remaining at this year's Tour de France. Because at the moment, it looks like no one can come close, and the scoreboard is showing that no one is close. Carapaz, for the second day in a row, investing a lot, but then dropping back to the Vingegaard, Uran, Lutsenko group. Vingegaard had crashed again, as you can see on his left shoulder, those abrasions, and Pogačar was going past Izagirre. He'd later go past Mike Woods. We'll look at the climbing times at the end of this video. He's put his ride up on Strava, Tadej Pogačar, if you want to check it out. He keeps his power data private. But I'd be interested to hear your thoughts down below. If, it's a big if, Primož Roglič hadn't crashed like 3 times, wasn't banged up, do you think he would have been able to stay with Tadej Pogačar in this stage? Do you think he would have been closer to Pogačar in the TT, and we'd have a closer GC situation right now? Because Pogačar, he went over the top of that final climb with a 3.5-minute gap or so on Richard Carapaz, maybe 3:10. He took the descent easy. Izagirre and Woods caught up to him and took the bonus seconds at the end, and Pogačar rolled over with a job well done, attacking on the second to last climb of the day in the face of Carapaz, going into the yellow jersey by a huge margin. We'll look at the results in a second. But before that, let's look at the climbing results. The Twitter account of Amateur Pirelli, a must follow on Twitter. Calderon, Pogačar goes 19 seconds quicker than the Schleck brothers and Contador in 2009, and then straight afterwards, Pogačar did about 21:55 in a later tweet, Amateur Pirelli said, on the Col de la Colombière, 2 seconds slower than Dan Martin in 2018. Wout van Aert fought really bravely, only like 2 minutes behind the GC contender group, but even with Mathieu van der Poel losing yellow, Wout won't be taking it. Carapaz has tried, but is just nowhere near the level of Pogačar, and MVDP loses the yellow jersey as predicted, but what a first week for him. And Geraint Thomas and Roglič, I'm not sure what the plan is with either of them. In the group header today, maybe their teams are hoping they can improve for the third week where they can help their, Vingegaard for GC, or Thomas can help Richard Carapaz. Here's the results. Teuns winning the stage. Pogačar comes in 49 seconds later, about 3 minutes and 20 seconds ahead of the GC contender group with Ion Izagirre on 4:09. Pogačar, 1:48 on GC ahead of Van Aert, and 4:38 ahead of Lutsenko. Lutsenko probably being his closest realistic rival. Let's hear what Pogačar had to say after the stage.
No, in the morning, not really. I said, we'll see how it goes today. Then in the start was super hard day. Riders everywhere. At the moment I was in breakaway, once not, and it was super hard for everyone. And in the end I felt good in this weather. Feels great, and I just decided before the last 3 climbs, I said to my teammates, let's try to break the race, and we did it.
But I hope you enjoyed the video. Like it down below if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'll be back with the Stage 9 recap with the Tignes first mountaintop finish tomorrow. Ciao.